So, you've probably heard of the five love languages by Dr. Gary Chapman. And if you haven't, don't worry, I will explain what they are and how they impact relationships. But there's something even more powerful that shapes the success and depth of your connections. And in this video, I'm going to talk to you about what truly impacts your relationship significantly more than the idea of love language ever even could. And by discovering these hidden forces at play that are happening beneath the surface of all of our interactions with people we're dating, people we're in relationships with, and honestly, this stretches out beyond just romantic relationships. It even affects friendships, family relationships. My hope for you is that you will be able to take any relationship that you want to the next level. First and foremost, if you've never actually heard of the five love languages, they are, and they're pretty self explanatory. Number one, quality time. This means spending time with somebody. Number two, physical touch. Number three, words of affirmation. Number four, acts of service. And number five, gifts. Now, this is an amazing study done by Dr. Gary Chapman, and there's a lot of research behind this. And I think that that is fantastic. But I also think that it's kind of an entry point or an umbrella where if we get more specific into those things and we talk about relationship needs, they are way more impactful. So let me give you a couple examples. Number one, underneath each of these sort of umbrellas of love languages are actually our relationship needs. And the more specific somebody is to meeting these needs in a relationship, the more connected we'll feel to them and the more fulfilled we'll feel by the relationship itself. Every single person has relationship needs, and they're really the lifeblood of relationships, meaning just like a tree needs oxygen and sunlight to survive, relationships need an exchange of needs taking place. Now, take a look at this for a second. I'm somebody, for example, with a big quality time love language. But if I sit down and I watch Netflix with somebody for 2 hours as my quality time versus I have a really deep and authentic and meaningful conversation, that's going to meet my need for emotional connection. Whereas quality time is the umbrella, if that includes things like just sitting down and watching Netflix, is not going to be the same to me as emotionally connecting through a deep conversation. So the need for emotional connection will actually tremendously outweigh and overpower just the idea of quality time as a whole. Another example is we can look at words of affirmation. If you look at a dismissive avoidants respond really well to small acknowledgments, things like, hey, thank you for taking out the trash this morning, or hey, I noticed you're really making an effort to show up for me lately. Thank you. Whereas anxious attachment styles, they respond to words of affirmation that are more about reassurance and certainty. Hey, I really love you. I'm excited for our future together. I care about you so much. I can't wait for our time together this weekend. Let's make a plan. So, the type of words of affirmation, when they're broken down into needs instead, go a much longer way and they're much more tailored to each individual. You'll see an anxious attachment style if you're like, hey, thanks for taking out the trash or thanks for showing up. That lands with them, but it doesn't meet the need of reassurance and certainty the way saying, I really love you. I can't wait for our future together. I'm so glad you're my partner would. Now, if you want to do a deeper dive, after I go through what it means to have an attachment style really briefly, but then most importantly, how we can take this learning of what each attachment style's needs are and pour these things into our relationships to just totally transform the connection. I do want to let you know if you want to do a deeper dive into this topic fully for free, just for a limited time, I'll put a link to a course down below that's not just about needs, but how to communicate needs in relationships, how to receive them, how to really bring them into relationships so you get that powerful momentum and you start seeing huge strides and improvements in your relationships in a short period of time. So I'll put a link to a free course. You can check it down below. So well, those umbrellas are fantastic entry points and starting points. We can get much deeper. And I want to tell you what some of the major needs are for attachment style according to integrated attachment theory, because this will actually have the biggest impact on your relationships. And I know a lot of you following this channel are big into attachment styles. Now, if you're not familiar, at a very high level, the three insecure attachment styles are anxious attachment style. They tend to sometimes feel needy or clingy or afraid in relationships. Dismissive avoidant attachment style, who tends to need a lot of freedom, independence, kind of space, and they get afraid of too much closeness or being trapped or being shamed if they open up emotionally or if they're too vulnerable. And then our fearful avoidants, who kind of share in the anxious and the avoidance side, sometimes referred to as disorganized attachment styles. And they basically have the same fears as both sides of the attachment continuum. They fear somebody abandoning them, but they also fear people being too close, and they kind of rapidly cycle back and forth from anxious to avoidant. Now, this is basically the number one thing that affects your relationships. If you don't know what your attachment style is, or you have a different attachment style than somebody else, the analogy I like to think of this as being is like you sit down to play a board game with somebody and you have totally different rules for how the game works because your attachment style is like your subconscious set of rules for interacting and giving and receiving love. So if you sit down and you're trying to play Scrabble while the other person has the rules for Monopoly, it's going to be confusing, even if you intend for it to go well. And that's like our relationships with people of different attachment styles. Now, if you can understand your attachment style, which is pretty easy to figure out, I'll also put a link to a free quiz with a report down below, or your loved one's attachment style, but ideally both, you can then unpack what the big needs are going to be because each attachment style has big needs. And if you can pour into these needs in your relationship, it's going to move the needle in ways you never thought possible. So, the big anxious needs are they tend to need a lot of encouragement, reassurance, certainty, consistency. They need a lot of feeling validated, important, prioritized, and wanted. Okay, so a lot of the needs there, if those are met, they'll actually feel quite calm in relationships. They'll feel like they can be themselves, like they can settle in, and they won't feel as anxious. The dismissive avoidant in relationships, they tend to need the obvious things like freedom, autonomy, independence, but they actually underneath that also really need acknowledgement, like we talked about, appreciation, especially for small things. They don't want to hear the big things of appreciation, the you're the best partner in the world. They don't trust that and they kind of shirk away from it. But things like, "Hey, I really appreciate you. You've been a great partner this week. Thank you for planning our date night." Things like that go a long way for them. And more than anything, dismissive avoidance actually really need acceptance, support, empathy, and understanding. These are huge for them. They often don't consciously realize it themselves, but they're such big needs that often make them feel like really connected to somebody. Fearful avoidance. They kind of need a combination of the two sides in a sense, but there's more. They need a sense of consistency and transparency and context for things. It really helps them build trust. They also need consideration. They need to know that somebody's looking out for them, having their best interests at heart. They do need the avoidance side of their freedom, their independence, and they do need to feel like they are a priority and they need depth of connection, but they also need growth. And they need to feel like the relationship is growing and evolving, and they really need novelty and exploration. So these tend to be really big pieces. Fearful avoidance also need a lot of depth, right? Because it goes back to if I can understand you, I can probably trust you. If you're interested in helping make a huge impact on other people's lives while also building financial freedom, I'm offering an early bird 50% discount on our integrated attachment theory relationship certification program that will help you become a certified integrated attachment theory relationship coach and build your own thriving practice by the end of 12 weeks. This 12-week on-demand program will help you kickstart your new career by teaching you revolutionary tools and strategies that help clients transform their lives and relationships. Build your own coaching practice and set yourself up for a waitlist of clients and financial success. Even if you have no coaching experience, this program will give you very in-depth tools, resources, and confidence to get started in a matter of weeks. And you can learn more information by clicking the link down below. These are huge needs for each of the styles. Now, if you know your style, practice communicating these needs to other individuals. And if you don't know your style, take the free attachment style quiz, learn what you are and learn what your partners are, or your partner or your friend or your family member. Like learn the people in your life and practice feeding into these needs a little bit, and you will see that your relationships will take a 180-degree turn. It'll be really exciting. So that is it for today. Don't forget to check out that course if you want to do a deeper dive fully for free for a limited time. Thank you so much for stopping by and for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe to this channel if you enjoyed this video because I put daily videos out here on YouTube. And if you hit the notification bell, you won't miss any either. I hope you have a wonderful day and I'll see you in the next video.